I can't say that I'm surprised, but I am sad that those two crazy kids couldn't figure it out. Um, if only because then it would cause all of us to sit around and go, so what does this mean for Honda? And what does it mean for Infinity?
Welcome back to Car-Pinionated, our weekly show on cars, the car industry, and driving in general. I'm Doug Stewart, digital executive producer for Fox 61 in Hartford. And with me is Jeff Buchholz, writer and editor and car enthusiast at WBBM in Chicago. So, Jeff, I wanted to do this week, I want to do a bunch of short takes because there's a whole bunch of stuff going on. And I think we could just do some quick hits and we'll get a lot of information out there. The first thing, and we're recording this on February 5th, and what came out this morning is that the marriage is off. And I know you'll be disappointed that Nissan is no longer betrothed to Honda. Apparently, they had some problems with the prenup, and it's not going to happen. So, you want to talk about that a little bit?
I was really looking forward to the matchmaking story that would appear in the New York Times Society section. Um, they met across a crowded balance sheet, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, and I remember, and it seems like only yesterday, although it was probably a month ago, when we first sat here and talked about how very improbable this thing was, and that it
Mhm.
seemed to be a shotgun wedding more than anything else, with the Japanese government sort of on the other end of the firearm, suggesting very strongly that Honda tie up with Nissan before Foxconn swoops in and buys the thing. And it's not really a surprise that that they were that there was trouble getting the balance sheet and the financial issues, I think, on the Nissan side figured out, because that company is still trying to figure out what end is up following the unceremonious departure of Carlos Ghosn. So I mean, this isn't, I can't say that I'm surprised, but I am sad that those two crazy kids couldn't figure it out. Um, if only because then it would cause all of us to sit around and go, so what does this mean for Honda? And what does it mean for Infinity? So it's not clear to me whether this means that Nissan is going to try to find a tie-up with another company.
Right.
The problem is that the only larger company than Nissan would be Toyota, and Toyota, as we pointed out, has so many irons in the fire that it's hard to see a way forward for that. And I don't think a tie-up with a smaller company like a Mazda makes any sense.
No, no.
Um,
I think a smaller company like Mazda or any, I don't know, Sousa doesn't exist anymore, but any of those kind of drags that smaller company down. And the problem laid. The problem was for Nissan, they wanted to be a marriage of equals, to use that Chrysler
thank
Daimler
you,
Chrysler term.
thank you, Dieter Zetsche.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And they simply weren't because,
No.
they're valued at what, a fifth of what Honda is. And Honda was like, no, we're in charge. We're gonna, you know, we're charting the path. And they were like, yeah, we think we're able to. No, we're not, because look how badly you've kind of put yourself in.
Yeah, and
So,
maybe what this means is that Nissan and Mitsubishi end up with um a deeper kind of alliance. I mean, right now the virtually the only Mitsubishi model that is selling in any kind of numbers is a rebadged Rogue, essentially,
mhm, mhm.
and it does pretty well, actually. So and we won't talk about what they've done to the once mighty Eclipse model. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if this is if they're finding looking for another tie-up or if this is just sort of the, we start the meter running until, Foxconn or Geely or BYD or somebody else swoops in and decides to take it over, which
Yeah. And
theoretically would give them, I mean, theoretically that would give them an in to the US market because it's not really a Chinese company, although
Mm,
that would be open to, I'm sure,
which is
considerable debate.
right.
Um, but
No,
that's we'll
and
see,
now
I
that you
guess.
say that, Geely is not a bad mix either. You
Yeah,
know.
I mean, they certainly have a bunch of brands already in China between the home brand and Zeekr and Lincoln Company, plus Volvo and Polestar and Lotus. The thing that they don't have really is a mass market Western, brand that is known to a
Mm.
Western audience. Um, but you know, uh, there would be some, there could be some overlap there, but are some gaps in their model lineup that would allow them, they could see opportunities possibly in the Nissan American lineup. But, whether that would pass muster in Beijing, Tokyo, or Washington is something that is just kind of not clear. But
Um, I wanted to move on to there's a new Model Y. How about that? They've redesigned and really they've redesigned, the Model Y. And you know, kind of what the front end looks like. And I was surprised that no one said this with the Cybercab. The Cybercab looks like what's it, XL1, the Volkswagen XL1, the hypermile
yeah,
car.
that's right.
So, and now this new front end on the Model Y, which is one of the world's most popular cars, if not the world's most popular car, I think it's handsome. I like what they did with the front end and the back end. I think they, I think it's a decent update. Um, and so that is a positive in my mind. Um, it's starting to come into showrooms in the US. And it has a turn signal. How about that? Like a turn
Wow.
signal stock,
Like a
an
wand? They
actual
brought the
stock.
wand back?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah,
Dang.
yeah.
All right.
What are you thinking about the Y?
Well, yeah, it is, I believe, the most popular electric vehicle in the world. I think you're right about that. Any redesign of the core Tesla products was long overdue. Since, and we've talked about this before, they largely have looked the same. They have all kind of looked like the Model X, which nobody really talks about anymore, which has largely looked the same for more than a decade. So really, any refresh that they can do is certainly a welcome addition to the landscape. And the fact that they have brought back some controls that were solved problems suggests that somebody at that company is thinking about how people actually use motor vehicles.
Right.
Um, and that's good too. And honestly, I just read something about this that um, in fact it was Kevin Williams at Inside EVs, who I've quoted here before, talked about how there needs to be a better new American electric vehicle to challenge Tesla, because even with all of the baggage and even with all of the sort of um, off-stage drama involving that company and its CEO and his other pursuits at the moment. Um, there is no other car that really kind of brings it all together in terms of the driving experience like the Model Y does.
Yeah.
So, a better Model Y means a better electric car, and that's probably good.
Competition is a great thing.
Hmm?
We're going to move on to the other side of the Tesla showroom. I believe I sent you this photo. My Colorado spy. uh, found a dirt lot with about 20 cyber trucks in it, not very far from the Tesla service center around Denver. It wasn't hidden. He wasn't skulking around in, a hat and, bandana or whatever. He was simply driving and saw this row of 20 cyber trucks. Cybertruck ain't selling. They're trying to give them away almost, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, let's put some of this in perspective. Is it selling at the rate that Tesla executives had boasted that they would sell? No.
Mhm.
Are they outselling every other electric truck in the US? Yes. And
Mhm.
it's not particularly close. I think the F-150 Lightning is 10,000 units behind or something like
Something
that.
like that, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, they are
Mhm.
selling. The issue, of course, is that the your first responders, your first, your sort of the sort of leading edge people, the folks who really want to get into this stuff first, um, got one. They all got one. So now they have to sell it against other trucks
Mhm.
in the market. And we had been seeing after some of the first trucks were coming out, and there were stories about markups and people buying them and then immediately trying to resell them for many thousands of dollars more, and people waiting months for delivery. It now appears as though delivery is happening very quickly. So the demand for the trucks has caught up with the supply in a way,
Yeah.
and now it is just another vehicle in that automaker's lineup. And I mean, you've driven a Cybertruck, I have not, so I can't speak to whether it's worth the wait or whether it's worth the money that is being charged for it. But I know that at one point there was a discussion about bringing it in at a lower price point or finding a lower price point edition. That doesn't seem to have happened yet, or at least it's not all that available. But it is, it's found a market. The market is not as big as the company thought it would be, and until another common thread of ours, until charging infrastructure in the country gets better, it probably won't.
They are offering a 750 per month lease for 36 months with a $7,500 down payment for under 10,000 miles for a year, um, which is kind of their latest.
I'm still stopped cold at a $7,500 down payment on
Okay.
a vehicle that at the end of it I will not own. That's crazy to me. But I mean, I suppose if it gets people to buy them, then that's good.
Yeah.
Of course, if the company drives the price down too much, they're going to upset people who bought them and suddenly realize that they are very, very, very backwards on their cars, which has
Mhm.
already happened with Teslas. It happened a couple of years ago or last year when
Mhm.
the prices were dropping as a way to keep market share up.
So moving on, um, so the airflow has come to a stop. Um, I felt like both of us said at various times, well, they're not going to build it anymore. And,
Right,
and
we
I
did
felt like
say
I,
that.
right. And like I remember saying it, and then I remember you saying it several months later, and then now apparently it's true. Because they're saying this C6X CA program, standing for Chrysler Airflow CA, has been stopped until further notice. Spending should be suspended immediately. And here's the interesting thing. No one's talking about the Halcyon. No one, I can't see any word on our Halcyon.
Has it the Halcyon has been memory hold apparently by the folks at Stellantis. Well, let's kind of take this apart. So Stellantis is in pretty bad shape, generally speaking. The products are largely aging. They have not been investing in the product for years. Carlos Tavares, the former CEO, was following the Carlos Ghosn model of keeping stuff on the road far longer than it should be and just throwing money on the hood to try to get cars sold. And that worked during the pandemic when
Hmm.
literally nobody else had cars. But now it's not working quite so much, which is why Carlos Tavares is no longer the CEO of Stellantis. Um, they've made a big bet on EVs with the arrival of the Charger Daytona, and had apparently planned to roll out an all EV version of the Ram Charger, which is a
Hmm.
sensational EV name, this year. They are retrenching on all of that. It sounds like the plug-in hybrid Ram truck is going to happen before the full EV Ram
Right.
Charger does. It sounds like they're changing the product mix on the Charger so that there are more internal combustion engines in the mix. And I think all of this has to do with a couple of things. First of all, the continued plateauing of electric vehicle sales in the United States, and the um, the real uncertainty about how the administration in Washington is going to handle any incentives related to the sales of electric vehicles. It certainly seems as though the administration is not really interested in encouraging anyone to buy an electric vehicle, not even Teslas, as it seems. So I think it becomes a less of a viable proposition for a car maker to bring that kind of product out. So, as attractive as the airflow was, I'm not all that surprised that the company has flat out said, "Nope, we're not building this." It is interesting to me that the Halcyon has gotten disappeared, though. To borrow a term from the ruling juntas of Central America back in the 70s.
Or
Um,
or the Soviets.
yeah, right. The Halcyon got a cold and all of a sudden it's gone,
Right. Yeah.
like Leonid Brezhnev. Uh, Although, that felt like less of a production ready car to anybody, I think, than just sort of a
Yeah.
what if exercise. And um, I think that the company has decided it can sort of ill afford those flights of fancy. Speaking of Stellantis, at this time last year, one of the things that was getting attention was Stellantis very suddenly pulling out of every North American auto show.
Mm.
I mention this because as we're recording this, the Chicago Auto Show is ready to open at McCormick Place. Um, and Stellantis literally pulled out of the Chicago show with a month to go before it opened last year, citing challenging market conditions in the United States. Well, apparently the conditions are better, or they've decided they can sell cars to people
You know what
there.
you know what it is? They listen to us.
Yeah, they did.
They did.
They did.
Because we were saying
We
they
told them it
should
was
be
a
there.
bad idea. Yeah, because it was a chance for them to show off the Charger Daytona, which they will be doing at the Chicago show.
Hmm.
It's people can drive it, as a matter of fact, and there's a couple of EV driving tracks inside McCormick Place, which is a nice thing about EVs. You can have people drive them and not gas everybody out of the building. But Stellantis is in fact back at car shows this year. So I guess thank goodness for small favors. But, if we got auto show exhibits, but we don't get the Halcyon and the airflow, that's probably a push.
Yeah, that's a fair trade-off.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and that Jeep thing, that's a lot of fun.
Oh,
That
yeah. Well, and I think part of it too is that Ford got all the attention last year at the Chicago show. because of course Camp Jeep wasn't there, but they didn't call it this, but Camp Bronco was. And everybody got to drive Broncos. And, you know,
A brief aside, one of my core memories is going to the 1964-65 World's Fair and the Ford Skyway, which was a series of convertibles, Ford Motor Company convertibles that were taken around on a track. And people got in them, and then I think it was a small world. I don't remember. There might have been dinosaurs. I was thrilled. Here's what it was. I wanted to be in a Mustang worse than anything else in the world, right?
yeah.
And I was 4 or 5, maybe 6, probably 4 or 5, and I wanted to be in a Mustang, and then we got in a Mustang, and my parents let me drive it, be in the driver's seat. There wasn't any wheel, but that is
Aw.
sort of experience of going through the thing, and I wish I had pictures, but like this, like I said, core memory,
Mhm.
to me. And but anyway,
Yeah.
so
What an exciting thing that was. And that, I mean, yeah, that show, that pavilion was, I mean,
yes,
it was a sensation that
yes,
year.
yeah, yeah. All right. Back to our short takes. Here's something I find this interesting, and I don't know how it's going to play out, but so VW and Audi dealers are suing VW Group and planning to sell the Scout like most other EV startup companies are sold, like reservations online and centralized delivery and things like that. The suit was filed earlier this week, challenges that Scout's independence from the Volkswagen Group. They're saying it really isn't a whole separate company, and it's not licensed as a manufacturer in Florida. They're going to add it. What do you think about this?
This sort of thing, as you point out, has come up a lot with a lot of EV startups. I mean, Tesla famously, but also Rivian and some other places. That the model for them is very different. Um, those car companies have decided that they don't want to have a third party serve as their potential customers' primary point of contact with their products and their experience. And from that standpoint, I can certainly understand their reticence to do that. Um, and I can understand the VW Group's thinking here in terms of Scout. It's a very different product from anything Volkswagen, Audi are selling. And so they want to do this a little bit of a different way. The concern from the VW and Audi dealers in the US, of course, is that this is a slippery slope. That unlike startups like Tesla and Rivian and Lucid, for instance, Scout, they argue, is a wholly owned subsidiary of Volkswagen. And their concern, I think, is that if this flies with Scout, how long will it be before the mothership decides, we don't really need dealers. We can do this with, we can do this with Atlases. We can do this with Q8s. We can do this with
Mhm.
anything. And
Mhm.
the auto dealers, which are um, very large groups uh, with lots of money and lots of employees, are going at this thing, and they cite laws all over the U.S. that prevent car makers from selling vehicles directly to the public. In several states, it's like that. They also can point to, in their public relations campaign, all of the civic and community causes to which dealer groups donate. Your little league baseball teams, your you know, uh, youth football, basketball, whatever, plus the thousands and thousands of people employed by those dealers.
Mhm. Mhm.
It is a uh, it's an interesting question about whether a particular company should be allowed to serve as the um, primary point of contact with its potential customers. I mean, I suppose I don't, go to the Frigidaire company and buy a refrigerator directly from
Yeah.
Frigidaire. I buy it from an appliance store. It may be an opportunity for this whole issue to have a hearing in court. And it would, whatever the answer is, or whatever the decision is, uh, could have really far-reaching
Yeah.
ramifications for how we buy cars. And the dealers also, it should be pointed out, the dealers' argument frequently is that they should be the point of contact for potential customers as opposed to the car maker um, because they can offer more competitive pricing, and it prevents the car maker from uh, jacking up prices willy-nilly and restores some
Or taking
competition in
them
the
down
market.
like what Tesla does.
Right. Yeah. Sort of price fixing and that sort of thing. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think it's a fascinating argument and a fascinating debate. And could affect the sale of, I think, one of the most exciting SUV truck prospects of the
Mhm.
2020s, really.
Yeah. I think two things occur to me. First off, to some degree or another, enough dealers have created a public perception of being difficult to deal with. And I'm going to put that as generously as possible. So I think that there are dealers who have created this perception of uh, dealerships that aren't good players in the market.
That perception becomes more universal if you talk, for instance, to women or people of color or people who are perceived by a dealership staff for one reason or another as being unable to buy a car.
Mhm. Absolutely. The second thing is, I'm thinking that the Porsche dealerships are sitting watching this very closely because Porsche dealerships in the past X years have made a mint on selling, upselling, and adding profit to the 911,
Mhm.
in its various iterations. And and Porsche on the from their side is like, well, how about we get some of that money? It's our car, So that dynamic is really interesting. So I'm just curious how, the Porsche dealer group is sitting there going, hmm, let's see how this goes.
Yeah, yeah, and a lot of them are cross-owned, of course. A lot
Yep.
of Volkswagen Audi dealers also own Porsche stores, though they may not be in the same locations. But yeah, I do think that could have big ramifications, not just in the German brands, but across the industry.
Yeah. Well, we'll be watching that. I mean, that fascinates me because you're right. I mean, this is the car. The Scout is the vehicle that so many people are like, that's the one. That's the one
Mhm,
I want. So
mhm.
we will see.
Yeah.
All right. This brings us to we're going to land the plane here this week. Um, Once again, you're welcome to go to YouTube and look up Car-Pinionated. You can see thank you, an entire playlist of different things. You can go back to our Nissan episode, our Nissan Honda episode, and see how wrong we were.
I don't know. I think we were pretty right, actually.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. Um, Anyway, and we'll be writing new letters to Ann Landers. Uh, all right, that's it. We will see you next time.